when you're a little girl or little boy, or you're just like younger, even like before teenage, before the adolescence, I think we're so wise. There's like pure wisdom. And you can see also that you start to get a little bit like the shape of society, but you still have some like purity, like of what you want to say, what who you want to become. So that's why it's very important. Also, we evolve and we change, but it's very important to keep in contact with that wisdom.
Welcome to Therapy for the World, an interview series exploring the personal stories of people working across the spectrum of self-care and world care. I'm Dan Sikorsky, a writing teacher and therapist, and the other voice you hear is Sofía Sánchez Martínez. Sofi is a poet, singer, editor, and researcher whose work moves between literature, music, and performance. She's originally from San Luis Potosí in Mexico, but has lived in Sevilla for a decade, where she earned a PhD in communication from the University of Seville, as well as a master's in creative writing. She's the author and editor of many books across several presses, including plays, essays on Latin American avant-garde movements, and poetry. I find her writing to be ethereal. Her stanzas are condensations into words of feelings that can be so difficult to grasp with care and precision. Her poetry has been translated into several languages, awarded the Luis Cernuda Prize, and appears in multiple anthologies. Sofi and I first met years ago when we were neighbors in Sevilla, and we would connect every so often to talk about craft, editing, and life paths. In this hour, we talk about the long arc of her creative path, from editing and publishing to eventually finding a new life in music. We recorded this on Friday, August 15th, 2025, at 5 in the afternoon. Here's our conversation. I'm so happy to be here with you again and to have a conversation, which I would love to start with the question that's been starting some of these conversations. If you had to think about a time, a person, an experience, something in your early childhood, in your youth, that helped shape the person you are today, what would you point to?
Oh, hello, Dan. I'm so happy to talk to you again because I just love this. For example, this question. And the first thing that comes to my mind and to my memory is my grandmother, the mother of my father. Her name was Elvira, and she used to give all of her grandchildren a poem, the same poem. Okay, and it was wonderful because it's a short poem, a very like simple with rhyme about. I would say it's about beauty and about something that it's fragile as a flower. It's about a rose and a little boy trying to pursue that rose. But in the end, I'm not gonna say that the poem is in Spanish. And this poem, like the what it showed you was that something very beautiful that I came to also learn later in life in a workshop of poetry, which was that to touch things destroy them. It's a very weird idea, but it means about the fragility of beauty, and of life also, and I would say, uh, la fugacidad, no? When something finishes, it's like the finite, no? The
Yeah, it's
finite.
finite. It's finite or it's ephemeral also.
Ex- exactly. That's the idea. So my grandmother told us, made us learn that poem for the school to all of her grandchildren. And this poem, I think my sister remembers it. My cousins remember this poem, and it was very beautiful because I've never come across a poem. So this was the first poem in my life. Of course, it was by speaking only. It was not written because I don't know if I already, maybe I could read and write, but I was very like 7, maybe 8 years old. Of course, I could do the typical, no? The first encounter with literature was this poem, and it reminds me a lot of my grandmother, of her food. It reminds me of this garden that she used to have like in front of her house, and it's like a whole connection with this garden, poetry, my childhood, and also the encounter with this phenomena, which is poetry, which is a phenomena of language, but also of image, the production of images, of imagination. Okay. So this encounter was like a, okay, what is this? And I want to do that. What is this? And I want to do that with language, with images. And I think I started writing just at 9 or 10 years old. I started writing because of that poem. So this was the first encounter with what now people ask me, no, what do you do? Or what do you like to do most? Or no, and poetry for me is very important because it's a way of thinking, it's a way of living, it's a way of feeling. That's how you feel. I think most of people that maybe even don't practice the writing of poetry, but live in a certain way with a poetic attitude, uh-huh, you can say that person is a poet just because a way of noticing life and reality. So that's what I believe is the most important. Even before the writing, it's the poetic moment, the poetic attitude. And that's what I read when I was really, really small, thanks to my grandmother, Elvira.
We could go with one of those 20 different branches that this memory creates.
Mm,
It feels like una memoria troncal, a trunk memory, the tree trunk, in the sense
mhm,
that I can see how so much was born of that experience.
mhm,
Just to point to one thing in particular, what is this? And I want to do this.
mhm,
Those questions, those feelings coexisting in you,
mhm,
I sounds to me like a testament to the wisdom that one does not need to know one's profession from head to toe to engage in it. There's always an
mhm,
element of healthy curiosity around how much I still have yet to discover in my
mhm.
profession as I go through it. Otherwise, it's kind of boring, right? It's like, I think maybe the question of what is this, what is poetry, is this still animates your work in a way.
Of course, I don't know what is it. When I know, I probably am gonna be dead, or probably I don't want to write anymore, because I'm gonna reveal the mystery. As long as I don't know quite sure how does that phenomenon work in the mind, in the consciousness, in the language, in the imagination level, in the body, because it's an embodiment of reality, the words in the poem. And this thing that I love when people say, I don't like poetry because I don't understand it. And I always say, that's the point of poetry. And that's how you see how people get so uncomfortable when they don't understand something. And that's my willingness to get into that abyss of not knowing, the unknown. And I just want to dive into that. That's why I love art and poetry, for example, no? Or paintings, abstract paintings. I adore that. Of course, you cannot understand that because it's subconscious.
I guess I would respond to that, that I hear you on there is an element of appreciating the unknown and the unknowable, maybe even in a poetic encounter. But I feel as though, and I wonder if you feel this too, I feel as though there has to be at least something, a sliver, an ounce of something that you do know or understand or can connect with in that um in that invitation into the unknown, right? Like something to a string from which to pull you in that speaks to something you do know, a way in which you can connect with that
Yeah.
otherwise unknowable mass of of stuff of life stuff.
Like stuff. Of course. I think that for me, I would say rationally, emotion. You have to connect at an emotional level. Then maybe you can connect at different kinds of levels, maybe cerebral or intellectual or whatever. But now I think it even goes in another way, which is you have to connect energetically. It's energy. Because when you feel, when you read a poem, and I think I'm just putting myself in the reader or in the perspective of the observer. I'm not putting in so much in the perspective of the maker, because I think the artist, the writer, the painter, the you know what you want to say, even though you try to hide. I think it's this game between hiding and showing. And then maybe I do a poem about my grandmother and the rose and the garden. I'm not gonna give you all of my memory in a poem. I'm gonna give you some stuff. I'm gonna give you maybe an image. I'm gonna try to make something out of it, but I'm not gonna give it all to you. But I know what I'm saying. That's important. I think from the perspective of the creator, you should know. From the perspective of the reader or the observer, I think it almost, I could say it goes beyond words. This happens in music. You don't understand maybe Spanish, maybe you're from another language, but you can feel, no? The chords, maybe the harmonies. It's something it's energy, I think. It's working with energy. That's what the artists are doing in reality. They're working with energy. And the energy is a perception, working with perceptions.
To
Oh.
pull on another branch there,
Mm.
the poem spoke, the one that your grandma would teach to you all. It said that to touch something is to destroy it.
Mhm.
You said that then came up in your writing courses, your poetry writing courses over time. I'd love to
Yeah.
dwell there for a little bit. What were your earliest poetic instructions, like the spaces where you learned this craft, where you were introduced to it in a more academic or formal setting? And yeah, and I hopefully also, how did that lesson apply in that setting?
Mhm. Yeah. So it was this moment, no, this first like fire that was this poem. I started writing on the margins of the notebooks in school. And then I was very interested, very young, like 12 years old, in philosophy. So I started reading The World of Sophie, this by Justine Gardner, I think. This book that is called The World of Sophia. Okay. So this talks about the history of philosophy. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I like even more philosophy than literature or poetry. I mean, they're so connected. And I asked in the primary school where I attended, is there any like are there any philosophy courses that I can at 12 years old? Because I think these Socrates and Aristotle, I think they're very interesting. I think there's something there. And they were like, okay, kid, you have to wait like till you're a bit older. Okay. So I kept writing a lot. And then I recall writing essays too, talking about politics and talking about social and talking about injustice. I was very political, even like at 12, 13 years old. And then at that time, I met someone that was like my first love. And this person was very important for my life because inspired me in the romantic way, but also inspired me in the artistic way. And this person is going to be important later on when we keep talking about music. And I formed my first band when I was 12 years old. And I was the bass player. And at that moment, I got very inspired and I wrote a whole book. It had poetry, essays, and it had short stories. I was 14, 15 years old. So I wanted to publish that. Like, there's something there. I want to publish. 15-year-old. Okay. So I went to the place here in San Luis Potosí, Mexico, where I am right now visiting my family. And I went to this like publishing from the government. It was the publishing house, Ponciano Arriaga. And they received me. They received my book. Okay, this little girl, she wants to write. And they recommended, like, okay, so we often like publish books with prizes or with other kind of, like old people or older, no? So we recommend you that you come to the workshops, poetry workshops on Saturdays with a poet and my first poet teacher and or person that introduced me to the ways of poetry, like officially. And his name is Mario Alonso, Mario Alonso Lopez Navarro. I think he still do he do that he still does that workshops, those workshops in another, I think it's a museum now, a house museum of another poet very famous in Mexico called Jose Manuel Oton. So this poet read some of my poems. I shared in these workshops. Like we all know, workshop was my first time. I was 15 years old, and it was beautiful because I had the experience of also hear other poets older than me and get inspired by that, no? So that's where I would say it began, like the commitment. I want to produce poetry, want to write it, edit. That's the first time. Edit your poems. What's that? Edit? Oh, you can change your mind. Oh, interesting, no? And then develop this eye of correcting your own work. And then I want to publish my books. That's my dream, no? It's like being an astronaut. Well, my dream was to become a poet, you know? And this, I remember some of the poems, like got good like feedback. And there was one poem, I remember one like love poem, very classy, like with rhymes and all in that time. Now I don't like it and I don't do it. I respect the people that rhyme, but I don't. Now I don't. But I think I don't remember if that was a poem with rhyme. But this poet, for me, like I respected a lot. I came with this poem and he told me I wouldn't add or take anything out of it. It's perfect how it is. And I was very like, okay, I'm not that bad. Okay, now it's being collective, no? Came out from my margins in the book, in the notebooks, and now I'm making it collective and it doesn't suck. So yeah, then some years passed by and my first book I self-published here in San Luis Potosí when I was 21 years old. I said, okay, I want to do this book. Nobody is gonna do it, but I believe in myself. So I remember I came with a plan, like economic plan with my family. Okay, so this is the book, and I'm gonna return you the money. You lend me the money to do this in the publishing house, in the press, and whatever, no? And I think they were very impressed. Like she's 21, she wants to do a book. Let's support her. But then here in San Luis Potosí, Mexico, it wasn't well seen that a 21-year-old wanted to do that. And they criticized me a lot. I mean, I presented the book, I didn't feel quite a connection. Some people bought the book, some people liked the book, but I didn't felt like the magic, the duende. It like the magic wasn't happening. So I remember that by that time I already lived 1 year in Seville, Spain. And in Seville, I read poetry and I felt the connection. I felt that my poetic energy was well received. And my projects, because I used to have a magazine of poetry, arts, and politics. And this fanzine, they received it, and many people from Spain started sending me their work. I think I don't know if it was 2 months or month per month. They would send me work, and it was a beautiful like connection between Spain and Mexico. But when I came back, I said, okay, I don't feel like I'm connecting. I'm gonna start a publishing house and I'm gonna publish other people beside me, okay? So that was the idea. I published my book because I wanted to start a publishing house. And then it was beautiful. We published around 11 or 12 different books of different people. It was novel, like short stories and poetry. And I think the best thing that came out of that is that the same publishing house where I went when I was 15, uh, agreed to work with my publishing house, well, our publishing house, my sister and I, to publish a very recognized poet that now passed away. His name was Luis Alberto Arellano, a very good poet from Mexico. And we published one of his books along the publishing house of the state of San Luis Potosí and Editorial Torbellino, which was our publishing house. So that was like, okay, I did it in a way, with other poet, but I did all of the, you know, editing, the correction, and also the actual book. I designed it. So I became, thanks to a friend, Isabel de Lara, which is a very good friend. She now lives in Barcelona. She showed me everything about editing, InDesign, and I did also like, I love the editorial work came to me as something that I could say love equally to poetry, to produce poetry. I love to make books. Like the love of books, it's something that it's. I have a big library here that I left in Mexico in my parents' house, and I see it and it's like, oh no, all of my books. And now I have a lot of books like in Seville, that's where I currently live. And it's like I have so many little libraries around the world, so many books that I love. It's like my heart is a little bit, yeah, in different books, like Horcruxes from Harry Potter.
Nice Harry Potter reference. Always important to have one of those somewhere.
Oh,
Uh,
Harry.
the statement that stood out to me in this story is your conviction that the creator should know that you know what you want to say. I don't doubt that you know what you want to say because you published 6 books in 6 years later on in this timeline. I know you know what you want to say. Maybe I'm envious because I certainly don't. I think it's something I tap into when I'm working with others on their writing, certainly. I think I know what you want to say. Maybe that's a
Mhm.
little bit of the feeling I try to connect with when I work on someone else's writing as an editor.
Mhm.
Or if I don't know, it's probably because you don't know, or we need to create an understanding around what you want to say a little bit more, right? Like what are you trying to say here is probably the question I ask in every single session of editorial work with someone, because it's often through the act of speaking about it and of diving
Mhm.
into what you're trying to say here, we come to
Yeah,
some clarity around the words. But when you were 12, I think you said, and you created this manuscript of essays and poems and so on. Did you know then as well what you wanted to say?
for sure. Maybe I knew more what I wanted to say when I was younger than now because I was clear. I think, and this is a theory I have. I mean, a home theory, which is that when you're a little girl or little boy, or you're just like younger, even like before teenage, before the adolescence, I think we're so wise. There's like pure wisdom, and you can see also that you start to get a little bit like the shape of society, but you still have some like purity, like of what you want to say, what who you want to become. So that's why it's very important. Also, we evolve and we change, but it's very important to keep in contact with that wisdom. Okay, so I there's a like a phrase from a friend, which is a painter, and she wrote, and maybe it's from someone that I don't know, but it says, "Infancia es destino," which means childhood is destiny. Okay, so I think in life, which is I gather as a circle or as a spiral, you always go back to the center, and the center usually relies or lies in childhood, in who you perceived you were or what you wanted. Obviously, that changes. That changes. It evolves. You don't have to, uh, because that could also make you stay in the past, and that's not good for evolution. No. But I think it's very important to keep in mind. For example, sometimes I'm a bit lost relationship wise. In that sense, I think I have like all the books and literature and music, but maybe in the relationship maturity, I'm like here. So that's a work in process. So sometimes I ask my little Sophie, what do you think it's the right thing to do? She's so good at advice, like giving me advice. Like she knows because she's very committed to an image of the good and the bad, maybe. Like she knows. When we become like adults, the I think the nuances of good and bad is like they're different. But when you want to ask for yourself, I don't say for the rest of the world, for yourself. Is this good for me? Is this correct for me? Is this wise for me? Is this gonna make me happy? That's simple. It's as simple as that. And sometimes, like, I think it's a good, like, to hear oneself's voice when you were like almost a child. This 12-year-old, she knows. I mean, she used to do short stories. She didn't believe she was bad at writing short stories. Now I say I'm bad at writing short stories. It's an idea that came to me. I don't think no one told me that. Myself put that limit. But she could write essays, politics, short stories, poems. She knew. She knew the drill.
She could show up at the biggest publisher in town and say, "Hey,
I have a book.
I have a book."
Now I don't do that. I'm so scared. It's like, let them come to me. If they don't show interest, if they don't show interest, I'm not gonna go and show my book. That's not correct. Weird, no?
Sophie, while we're still on the topic of writing,
Mm-hmm.
you were talking to me earlier off the air about how you're doing a little bit less writing yourself right now, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you're still doing a lot of editorial work. Um, I like that you use the word editorial instead of editing
Mm-hmm.
often in your speech,
Mm-hmm.
which I imagine has to do with the fact that you had so much history, so many stories and history in working in publishing houses and editorial
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
teams, the editorial world. Yeah, yeah, which is traditionally where a lot of editing happens, but you call it editorial work still, which
Mm-hmm.
is interesting. What is your approach to editing? How do you work with a writer when they bring you a poem, for instance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because when I started in this editorial Torbellino, my book, my publishing house, I think I was very. I wanted to keep this editorial work, which is this line, no, this line of what it's supposed to be the kind of a quality, no, that we're looking for, and maybe to keep it good for everyone, no. So you have all kinds of authors, all kinds of ages. This was very important. We could have a 19-year-old poet, which was very good, Luis Khaled Mendoza. I remember he may be still here in San Luis. And then Luis Alberto Arellano, who had some good, important prizes of like literature. So for me, it was important that the age or the experience wasn't a problem. No, it was the quality of the writing. And this is very interesting because I remember just by conversation, I thought this 19-year-old is a good poet just by the conversation. He told me like a memory of his like adolescence, childhood, I don't know. And I was like, oh, just the way he's telling me this story, I'm sure he's a good writer. And when he sent us the manuscript, it was a good manuscript. But then, of course, there was more work in the editing, in the actual editing, than maybe in the book of the other poet, no? Because there was a work already and there was like experience and self editing. So it's easier. Then I went to Seville to study a master in creative writing, and then I could write a lot. That's when I had this like it was like an explosion of creativity. Actually, it was crazy that I think I wrote 3 books in 1 year, 3 poetry books, and all of them were published later on. It was a play and 2 poetry books. And when I went to Seville, feeling that connection, I decided to end my publishing house because I didn't have the time and I wanted to focus on writing. I think there's a time for everything, as you said earlier. and you have to choose your battles. You have to say, okay, right now I want to write, and then you write. Right now I don't want to edit, I want to write. And I did that for a few years. Then I started the PhD, so there was a lot of writing. And then there was like a publishing house that invited me to start a project that was very interesting, which was Caótica Libros. This is a publishing house that it was founded in Madrid, and the two editors. It started good. First year, I think I stayed 2 years. It was good. It was a good experience. But then we ended our relationship, like work relationship, and I feel very proud of that year, because those 2 years, for me, it was seeing how the publishing house world worked in Spain. Okay. So it was good because now I had the experience in Mexico. Now I have the experience in Spain, but it was essay world. So I remember I edited my first book with Caotica was Donna Haraway. That's like having a jewel in your hands to edit. And I felt so excited doing all of this big, the bibliography, or the end that you have all of these quotes. And it's like, it was mad. It was like 20 pages. Like this is another book. Just the references. I mean, this is chunky theory. Remember my relationship with philosophy? This was insane. Then I did another book, which was Robert McRory, which is queer theory. What a book! I mean, just like essays that matter, ecology, uh, everything. No, like this new approach, ecofeminism. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. And then later on, and now my actual like work that I do, apart from little things that I did like on my own, like with authors, and that's a work that is slower but very beautiful too. Just to work with one author, and it's all by yourself. It's not with other publishing houses, just with the author. That's a very personalized work, and I like that work. It's a bit slower. And now I'm with Editorial Ultramarina. And what I did with them, and I'm so happy to do that, was the anthology of the Infrarealists, which is what my PhD was based on. I finished the PhD last year, and a few months later, I was doing the anthology of these 20 writers of Mexico and some of Chile and some of Peru, with this poetry that's being taken out of the center of the talk or the culture in Mexico, because they were treated as rebels that were just violent, and they're not part of literature history in Mexico. How are they not going to be part of literature history in Mexico when they are the most close to the way of seeing the world, to the language of the streets, to the way of seeing the body and the relationship, the erotic part of Latin America, of Mexico. So I think it's like so necessary. And I did that, and I'm super, super happy that I could be the editor of that anthology. And then Aurora, Aurora, she published a book, and I was also the editor. So I think it's been quite an opportunity, but always working with independent publishing houses, never with a big one. So I could say that I've always been close to the author, or in some of the cases to the translators. Because, for example, in the books that I mentioned earlier, the Caotica books, it's just with the translators, because the Robert McRory is in, I think, Washington, and I mean Donna Haraway's like doing these like international conferences and universities. Like it's far away, but with other authors, it's close, and it's very personal. It's very endearing. So I think it varies on the project, but the relationship with the text, obviously in the editing process, is very important. Even though maybe you're not agreeing, even though maybe some poems you don't like, because it doesn't matter that. But what you have to do is to make it work as a system, because books are, it's very cold to see it this way, but it's like a system, okay? So it has to work in that sense. The order of the tests, or obviously the correcting, etc. No, even the design. That's a place where I also like to participate. The design of covers, the design of the book, everything. The margins, important. Everything is important in a book.
So it's a system. You
Yeah,
also said the word slow. It's a slower process to work with an independent author. How
yeah.
does that work look when you meet with the author? Are you editing on the sentence level? Are you thinking always on a systemic level? I'm sure the sentence is also part of the system. So I wonder what does that work look like on a day-to-day basis with the writer?
For example, in a my I think my specialty, because in the essay process, it's more about maybe paragraphs. You know, I mean, you go by sentence, but it's not as detailed. It's more like in the global aspect. But in the poetry level, verse by word by word, every comma. Why did you put 2 points instead of point and comma? What? Why did you make a space here? Maybe, everything. I am very detailed, but I'm very respectful, because I always say, okay, you ended like this poem. It's nice. It's very beautiful. I suggest this, but you're the author. You decide. You know, it's very important that you offer options, maybe two options even, but it's your poem, it's your poetry. So I'm very respectful in that sense, but I go word by word, point and comma per comma in poetry. Essays, it's more the global
I like
paragraph.
that the word is why that you asked. Why this and why that. It's an invitation to justification and invitation to intentionality behind
Oh,
behind the word choice, the punctuation choice. I'm also
mm,
reminded of what your first writing teacher said to you. You don't
mm,
need to add or delete a thing, and how important it is to tell a writer that when it's true
mm.
so that it builds that self-confidence also in the
Oh,
product.
very important. And you know what? That was like a beautiful gift that this person gave me. And when I see it fit, I say that this poem I wouldn't take and add anything. Okay, and it's very nice because I see what it made to me, which is this confidence. And I don't see it like I don't give it easily, but I also know what it made for me. I didn't forget, you know, I didn't forget these words that this person gave me. So it's a present, no? And it's also builds confidence. It's important to build confidence. And I wanted to say like about books that I remember recently done in this process, which is one by one on one. I'm sorry. It was with the poet and singer, jazz singer Lola Botello in Seville, and this beautiful, amazing author and like artist. She made a book about her parents and about grieving, this process of grief, no, when they died. So the process was so intimate then that I felt I was healing through the editing of this book. And we used to like go poem by poem, and some destroyed me. Like they wanted to make me just like cry with her, but then it was like, okay, don't lose focus of the job, okay? But then I could, if I had the chance, I would say to her, today was very, it was so hard, it was so intense. Thank you for sharing, because we don't say that anymore. It's like, thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being so courageous to show this, to work in this, and to also she made it a poem. It's a poetry book. She published it, and she made a play, like a theater piece, and a CD. So she connected theater, music, and poetry, beautifully made, with a lot of sense. It had sense. So I connected emotionally. And I was very like I really like I came in a way to the process of editing, and I came out different. It was amazing. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. About that grieving process, also, she opened a space for people she knew that had maybe a loss, and invited them to send her an audio record telling or sharing something about this process, this grieving process. And she knew a little bit of my story, and she asked me, would you like to share? And I said, of course. And some told me, I couldn't go because I was working, but some told me that in the theater, in the play concert, she put one of the recordings, and one of them was me talking about my experience. So,
Mm,
like, full circle, no?
mm. I'm struck by an image of the editorial encounter as the meeting of two subjectivities, one the author and the other an interlocutor that
Mhm.
organizes the dialogue a little bit more, perhaps, or adds to it. One is chosen as an editor for a reason, right? For your capacity to listen and to engage and to be touched by, to almost like be in the therapeutic sense of an emptiness that welcomes the fullness of the other. You empty
Mm.
yourself out so that the other story can enter you and you can be in conversation with it. You mentioned earlier that you stopped writing a bit, or you're doing less of it now. Maybe you're doing more support of others and engaged in
Yeah.
other artistic projects. But you stopped writing, you said, because you felt you needed to live in order to write. I wonder if you
Yeah.
might speak to that a little bit. What did you mean by that?
How? I mean, I think when you're in a writing process, I feel there's like an abstraction of reality. It's kind of, I don't know if the word is meditation, but you install yourself, or at least that happens to me, and I feel very lucky that that happens to me. But when inspiration and work both strike me, it's it's a phenomenon. Okay, so maybe it happens when I'm gonna about to sleep, something pops in my mind, and I remember one of my, like, when I write something that was very inspired, without even light, I just start writing, like I'm taking almost like a message from someone, like words start coming easily, what I want to say, what I'm remembering, almost like yeah, like a bit of a, what do you say when you were like on drugs? Kind of another state of mind. Yeah. And actually, this exists in neuroscientific, because I love neuroscience, obviously, too. In the process of knowing a little bit more about consciousness and consciousness and conscience, it is two different words, no? You
Consciousness and conscience, yes.
consciousness and conscious, yeah. So there is a process in the brain which is the state of flow. And many people talk about this. So the state of flow is this moment of inspiration that it can be also, how do you say, like you can give it to others. That happens in music. That happens in music. And that happens also in, for example, a creative writing group or in a yoga group. Like there's a unity, you know? There's when there's a collective, this state of mind gets to other people. That's when I talk about energy and you said conscious? Yeah, conscious.
Consciousness, yes.
Yes, 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 yes. And I think I believe that these processes can be produced, but then also they can be also just like, okay, I welcome this process. So it can be, you can do it, of course, but you can also stay, okay, I don't want to get into that right now. Mhm. And I think many people do that also. I think everyone has the capacity to write, to do poetry, to paint. They just choose not to do it because they don't need it, maybe, in that moment of their life. Right now, what I feel is that I'm choosing not to get into that state of mind for any, I don't know the reason. I just know that I want to experience different things, not in that state of mind, because my writings began to look very alike, like a copy of myself. And I think that's a phenomenon that also happens when you write a lot, you publish a lot, and you kind of you discover a little bit kind of a formula. Ooh, people like this. They're publishing it, and I'm not putting money. Like my last 5 or 6 books, they just do it, they sell it, and I just go and present the book like, hello, I did this, and I didn't do anything. I just did the book. So that's beautiful. but then you can get a little bit of like a comfort zone. And what I feel is sometimes that could mean that your work could be like over vigilant of yourself, like you know that they like when you talk about this unconsciously. So that for me messes with the quality of the work. Okay.
Mm.
So right now, what I feel more into is creating songs, creating music, and music has taken an important place in my life. Yeah. So writing is a little bit like I know that's there. It's my secret garden. It's there. That rose, that image, it's there for me, no? And I'm sharing it in another way. For example, recently we went on a small tour with the band that I have, where I sing and where I play some instruments, Liberté. And my book, one of my books, was published in German. It's a translation. It's my first translation ever. So I was enjoying that, no? Like saying, okay, some of the books that I've already done, like written and published, they're having their own curse. And I'm so lucky to see what's going on with them. Like there's life after me. I'm not doing anything anymore. Like the words are already there. The translator, by the way, Maya Traine, she's a philosopher. And I was like, I love it. How how did that book got to the hands of an Argentinian but German based philosopher and translator? It was fascinating. It was fascinating to see, to have in my hands a book that I don't understand. And it's my book with my words, with my feelings, with my life. And I just see symbols where I understand the names like Sevilla. I understand the names of the people that I maybe dedicate or two poems, and I can see like Machu Picchu and the word cosmos and maybe some words. I don't like. I just and I love German. I actually learned a little bit when I was like yeah, younger. I don't remember anything like so yeah, so I have the book in my hands and it's like, okay, I understand my name. But that's it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful miracle. I'm super thankful for that.
You've been speaking about this transition from writing to music,
Mhm.
which opens up or expands, maybe is a better word, a chapter in your life. You've always been connected to music from what I understand, but this was you jumped into the pool a little bit more over the last few years. What do you think led you to those waters? What do you think led you to decide that you or to be drawn to I don't know if you decided, maybe you were just drawn to music, both your own and collective music with others. What drew you to engage in this form of expression?
Yeah, I think music for me has always been a connection, like a bridge towards my father. Okay, so my father, he was a musician before we were born, my sister and I. And he was like a classical guitar player when he was young. He got into the Mexico Conservatoire when he was like very, very young, playing like classical guitar. So he also composed some things. Also, he played like the typical thing, no playing in parties, in weddings, the typical thing, not just to do something with it with that more professional. But then when he also had another career which was like chemistry, he makes flavors. It's very interesting. My father is very like a renaissance kind of man. He also likes to invent, musician. He now got into 3D model and he makes like sculptures. He's very interesting. And I think when I was 12 years old, before that, I used to play a little bit of piano, classical piano, because my sister played piano and I didn't want to get behind, stay behind. So I started piano. Also, I liked ballet because I love ballet too. I love dancing. I love flamenco dancing too. I used to dance flamenco, but with ballet, I remember that my mom took me to see a class and I saw the pianist and I saw, no, I want to study piano, not the ballet. So I decided that like at 8. And I played a little bit of piano with my sister. Sometimes we make like duets, Mozart. Very, very nice. I mean, this was my entering music by piano and reading and classical music. That was a strong entrance to music. Then I met this first love, David, and I got into this band when I was 12. So I music became something more like a love connection, no? Like I'm in love for the first time. And music was there, no? Like the first covers we did about was like Nirvana and Blink 182 and no, like very grunge, no, very rock and roll. And I remember that I came with my dad, which he already is and was a musician. And I told him, like, Dad, I'm the bass player of a band. I need a bass. And he was super happy because he used to play the bass also, no? So he showed me my first songs in guitar and in the bass. And so I saw, okay, music connects me to very important men in my life. Okay? So it was a way of communicating with people that I loved, especially with men. Okay? This is important, I think, in a psychological level, no? So then this guy was still in my life only as a friend, but he stayed in my life for 15 years as a friend, important friend. And we used to have conversations about God, about life. I think he was kind of I remember him as this guide of the tribe, like a shaman. I used to call him, you're like a shaman. Like he had so much power in the sense of spiritual power. Obviously, he liked to experiment with peyote and marijuana. He already had a tattoo at 14. Like he was very ahead of his age, okay? Then he went out of school. I mean, they kicked him out of school because he was super rebel, and they kicked him out. And then I saw him like in periods of a year passed and I saw him. 2 years passed and I saw him again. 3 years passed and I saw him again. And then I went to Spain and we kept writing each other until one day he told me, like, I felt the same for you. Like I was drawn to you. And it was beautiful because I felt, okay, it was not in my imagination, like the love, romantic love. But of course, we always were only friends. Okay. So this platonic, love was very linked to music. And then he passed away. He passed away on 2020, on the end of 2020, on November, very suddenly. Sadly, he committed suicide. And it was like, I mean, for me, I think it's been like the hardest pain, the hardest loss, because I already lost my grandparents, but they were all, like one natural deaths. But this was like unbelievably painful and sudden. So in 2021, just a few months after his loss, like 3 months, I was very sad, maybe even depressed. And I was like, I want to sing. But what I really wanted is to cry when you want to shout and cry. But I wanted to be very loud, but I wanted to be beautiful. So I started, and I think that's around the time we met. I started with jazz classes, vocal jazz, to learn to sing jazz. And this changed my life. It connected me to life again because I was really sad. And of course, it was like a mean of communication with maybe with this person after his death, no? It was like, okay, I'm taking some kind of testify, no? What maybe our dreams were when we were um, adolescent, teenagers. If you see, my life actually is just taking what I wanted when I was a child and what I wanted when I was a teenage. It's like everything is there in my current activities. I already wanted that when I was in that time. But now it has more sense, no? Of course. It has more sense. And with music, I became there was a point where I started getting a lot of affected amygdala, you know?
Vocal cords, you mean?
You know the vocal cords, the ones that are here. There's
Okay,
remember the tonsils, maybe tonsils.
sure, maybe. Yes, I don't know.
Like tonsillitis. So I wanted even to remove them. I was like, "You're not touching this," and and I've been resisting. But in the end, I went to like different people that helped me. Like I went to different doctors. I think it was the grieving process. I think it was just pain. I mean, it's connected to how he died, so it's everything here. And then what I did was someone told me very, very like therapeutically when I was working with my vocal cords and with my voice, and told me, "What is your connection to music?" And I told her, "I think it's the loss of someone very important to me, a friend, a master, like a teacher, and someone I loved when I was a child." Okay. At some point, I really wish for you that you relate to music in the joy and the life aspect and your individual experience. You, I suggest, you should disconnect this traumatic thing that happened to a loved one and just take your present and your gift and enjoy. Okay, it was a powerful moment. I cry, all of that revelation, therapeutic moment. And then I started taking the music from another perspective because I used to chant, I used to sing and cry because there was all of that process. But then it transformed into an art, and then it transformed into this like I don't see it as a professional approach. I see it more as a passion that I have. Hobbies is I think it stays like small now. I would say hobby, but it's a passion that I have. It's something that I love to do also. So yeah, and collectively it also made me feel supported by people, no? Now my band, they're like brothers and sisters. It's like a
You
family.
guys, you guys just came back from being on tour in Belgium and Germany. I'd love to hear about what it was like to be with others who you called singing beautiful shouting, which I thought was lovely.
Mhm.
And for each of them, perhaps it's beautiful noise, whatever it is that they're creating. What is it like to be with others who share this passion? And you guys got along so well, which is hard to do, I think, when you're traveling with a group of people for so long. What were the rules of that? The rules or the secrets of that experience?
So of course, it's difficult because everyone has their own relationship with music, right? Everyone has their own dream about music. Maybe I don't have a very professional way of looking it. I have another approach, maybe more spiritual or therapeutic, and other members of the band have other approaches. I think at the beginning it was hard because we also perform in Seville when we can, maybe one concert per month, one concert every 2 months. But we rehearse every Friday. Like these people is people that I see, no matter how occupied I am, we always rehearse. We try to every Friday. Like that's the structure, so we already know each other very well. But you know what they say, if you want to know someone, go and take a trip with them. So when you travel, every little aspect of the personality gets a bit like widened and they can clash a little bit, no? So yeah, at the beginning it was hard, especially between the guitar player and me, because we're like brother and sister, so there's a lot of um like we know each other's trauma. He's a psychologist. So he knows that I have daddy issues, that I have problems with people telling me what to do. So he tries to be like very gentle. But then I have a sweet, I am a sweet person by definition, but I also can be explosive. And when something I don't like something, you can see it in all my energy. And that can be a little bit, oh, Sophie transformed, she's now mad, no? Or she's not very happy. But then we talked about it. Hey, look, I saw you were a bit of uncomfortable. Was there something wrong? And then our conversations were so nice because it was like, yeah, it's not you, it's me. This that you comment on the rehearsal remind me of this, of the past. It's like, but not from you, but from other people in my life. No, so it's beautiful because we're already so worked, like we're not teens anymore, no? And we're very responsible of our own baggage. So that's what I think happens in the tour also with other people in the band. There was connections, there was more like profundization maybe in each one story, or like I think it was a way of seeing how also this was kind of like a collective therapy, because what the results were beautiful on stage and people used to say like, wow, we can see, like the music was great, but the thing that we enjoyed most in the performance was the connection between you. It seems like you really like to hear one another. You really enjoy one another. It was beautiful. And so there's also like a job in ego because everyone tries to have their own like master or their own talent shown. So the show is very like trying to connect, like there's no only one people doing something. For example, I sing, but then I go to the percussions, quiet, listening. Or maybe the violinist, which is Nana, she's from Germany, she's an amazing musician in person. Sometimes she goes to the main, like with the guitar, and she sings. And it's like, oh, this band is moving around. Or maybe the clarinetist also sings. Okay, like everyone is, it's not just one person show. It's beautiful. I think that's working also with the whole box of jewels, and having each one of the members have their special moment and also listen to each other. That's the most important thing in a collective work, either being a band or a theater play or whatever. Listen to each other. Very important.
They come for the music and they come for the relationship as well.
Oh,
I wonder what the poetic attitude is there for you in music.
completely poetic. I mean, the thing that I like about music, for example, in Belgium, we not did only like concerts, we did also music, street music playing. That's hard. It's hard because people might not want to hear you when they're walking through that street. People maybe are going through something difficult and maybe that's exactly what they needed to hear some music. So people are coming like coming and going. And what I like is that when you're doing music, maybe singing or maybe just playing or doing other stuff like supporting the band, it's it's like a way of being very present. Like music is being very present. So the poetic attitude is totally there. Like it moved me at some time, at some point that I cried because it was like life occurring. So the poem was that moment.
Life occurring and me occurring for life as well, right?
Right.
You're there for that moment.
Yeah.
Sophie, I want to thank you. I'm sure there are other branches of this chunk that we could keep exploring. And I want to thank you by saying what you say to your students, it seems like, to your writers. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for listening. You're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. If this conversation resonated with you, consider reviewing Therapy for the World or sharing the link with someone who might appreciate it. Until next time, speak with care and listen deeply.